Hi, welcome to the Business Class ESL Break Room. We're a company of passionate language trainers and coaches. We're here to share ideas to improve our skills and strengthen the training community. Come in for some inspiration, leave with tips to apply to your sessions today. Hi, and welcome to the ESL Break Room podcast. Today we are on episode 25, and we're delighted to be welcoming learning consultant Deirdre Cijffers. So Deirdre is quite experienced not only in learning design, but also specifically in ELT education, having held a long-time role as head of learning and development at Cambridge University Press, which you may have come across some of her webinars or talks with them. Currently, Deirdre is heading Learning Unfurled consultancy, where she helps teachers and institutions build excellent online learning experiences via talks, workshops, webinars. So we're really excited to have someone with your skill level here. So welcome, Deirdre.
Thanks, Sue. It's great to be here.
Oh, we're really glad you could make the time, because the reason we asked you to come today was because we'd like to look at the issue for us as trainers, how to motivate our learners with their outside of class learning, which is generally, e-learning. And personally, in business class, we have a specific set of e-learning exercises on a platform we ask our trainers to involve learners in. But I know for other trainers at large, they have similar issues. So, what can you do when you have that busy professional who just can't seem to get to their e-learning?
I have been asked this many, many times. And it's not just in a professional setting, it's also in a higher education setting. It's fairly universal. So people love the time with the teacher, with the expert, with the person who's going to inspire them and do like really fun activities and discussions and be really in depth and kind of exciting about all the possibilities that this new skill will give you. Nobody really is excited about doing the backup consolidation stuff that comes afterwards. We all know that it's valuable, but really we're there for the golden time with the teacher or the trainer, and with that kind of really dynamic experience that doing the online exercises afterwards is like categorically not. So basically, the teachers have a struggle because there are multiple things that act against us. So one is that people are not actively drawn to those activities, but they're also actively pushed away. So there are multiple things that make people actively not want to do it. So if it's exercises, I mean, it's a bit like if you want to live in a nice home, it's marvelous to be able to choose your curtains or decide where the furniture is going to go and the color scheme for your kitchen. All of those things are lovely and creative and amazing. But if you want to continue living in a lovely home, you also have to wash the dishes and take the bins out. And all of those things, like, they just kind of add up to ultimately having a lovely home, but it still needs kind of maintenance all the time. So they're not particularly exciting, but they do have to be done. So making these things obligatory is obviously like the first kind of, it's the first standard of how we go about things. And many of these programs will have it will include like that you have this many hours with your teacher or trainer, and you have this many hours that you have to put in doing your exercises. So it's kind of baseline that's there, but it's pure extrinsic motivation, and it actually counts against intrinsic motivation for getting those things done. So more likely, if you're engaging with that, then what you're doing is, I've got to click through buttons, click the buttons, click the buttons, click the buttons. The time is ticking away. Maybe I have to get a minimum score. I'll just try again and again and keep going until I've done it. We've called that in the past zombie clicking, where people will just keep clicking until they get the score required, but no actual learning is happening. So the extrinsic motivation, while it is our baseline tactic for getting people to do this stuff online, it detracts from the goal of getting people to do that stuff online. So it's part of, I'm not really interested in it, but I'm also like actively don't want to engage. So it gives it a kind of double-edged sword kind of nature to it. So one of the things that we can do is we can look at the things that push people away. So the stuff that pushes people away is that I'm on my own. If I'm learning a language, probably if I'm learning a language because I want to learn the language, I like communicating with people. Online exercises don't include any communicating with people. I maybe like to do stuff if I'm doing it in a business context. I want to do it because I need to collaborate with people and I need to achieve something with them. So there's again a social nature to that goal and to your own motivations that again is not represented in online exercises. And then there's that sense of isolation and, is anybody even noticing this other than the scores? So the system is registering my scores, brilliant. But what else is happening with that? I'm just kind of treading water, putting in my time. But if we have a way of bringing those things back to communication with others, collaboration and achieving things, and somebody paying attention, then that can be very powerful indeed and can tap into someone's intrinsic motivation, but also make something more personally interesting. So in a talk that I gave recently for Cambridge, we talked about just general interest. So things are interesting if you like doing them, if they match your interests and your preferences of how you spend your time. And that's one thing that we can do in our face-to-face or in our live stuff, easy peasy. So I know that you love dancing, let's say. We can talk about dancing. I can always bring something in. We can use videos of, if we're going to talk about famous people, we'll talk about famous dancers. You can really tailor, you can tailor what you're doing in that time to the person's interest. But the online exercises were built forever ago, by someone who is just trying to cater to absolutely everybody, or to a group of people who are trying to cater to absolutely everybody. So there's no way that interest can be represented in that work that's online. So bringing those things all together, then if we take the time that the students are working online, and what they're doing, you have to know what they're doing. If you don't know what they're doing, then this all falls down. So know what they're doing. Assign them something specific, not do the exercises for Unit 4, but do these exercises on the present perfect, talking about experiences, and do those exercises on these adverbs of frequency, for example. And then they go away and they do those. And then next time they come back into the lesson, and we're going to talk about your experiences of these different kinds of dances and how frequently that occurred for you in your life. And you can build an interest-related conversation that uses the language they practiced that they wouldn't necessarily have been able to do before they did that practice, or they would have been able to do before they did that practice, but now they can do it really well. So as a trainer, there are multiple things that you're doing there. So one is you're going in and checking what it is that you're assigning for them to do in between classes. Then you're checking the data and making sure that they did do it. Because if you celebrate a success when they didn't actually do anything, then it really undermines your case. But know what you're doing, know what you're assigning, check the data, and then afterwards, draw on their interests, even though that language had nothing to do with their interest at the time during the exercise, but draw on that language in the context of their interest. So refer to it heavily and use it within a conversation that they're going to be naturally, intrinsically interested in. So, and then when they've done that, you can have a much more nuanced conversation. You can really respond to their use of that language, be really specific with your feedback, and celebrate the success of, like, we just had an amazing conversation about this thing that you love because you did, you washed the dishes and you took out the bins of doing your online exercises at home. So it kind of brings those things together in a way that means that if I'm doing these exercises online, it's not just, I'm doing these exercises because I have to put in these hours. It's in order to facilitate a really fun conversation that comes afterwards. And when the conversation comes afterwards, some people just won't have had the time because we are all busy adults, and that's just the reality of things. So having that conversation is an opportunity for you to build on that and to kind of show them, okay, this would have gone really so much better if you'd done the language, but we've still managed to have a conversation of a kind
Mhm.
based on that interest. So they're not going to feel like, oh, I've ruined it by not doing
Yeah.
homework, but I can see a gap and I really want to talk about this thing better. So I'm going to go back and do that later on. So it makes things kind of out of sync, but you've got that link before and after. So there's a thing that I've talked about in sessions before, where we talk about Vegas. You know, there's a quite famous expression of, you know, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. And this is the opposite of that. We can't have that kind of thinking. It's like working online is not an episode away from the rest of your life. It's part of your life. And when I first started giving these talks, it was pre-COVID, way pre-COVID, but it was also pre everybody just being online all the time. And the fact that our online lives and our in real life lives are much more closely knit than they ever were before. So I think it's not too much of a leap for a student and indeed a trainer to understand and to accept and utilize the fact that what happens online is part of what happens in real life, and what happens asynchronously is part of what happens synchronously. So the way that we work that into our educational strategies when we're teaching is that same thing of like, you know what you're assigning and you sell it to them. You sell it, get, you know, big up the marketing on this set of exercises. You're going to do this set of exercises because it is this, and you will consolidate what we did today, and it will build into what we're going to do tomorrow. And I've got a surprise for you. If you've done it, I've got a surprise discussion, game, whatever, that we're going to work on next time once you've done these exercises. So make time for it. So there's a definite sales pitch for the work that comes afterwards. Then they do the work after, they do the work, and depending on the amount of time that you have in between lessons, like maybe if, let's say, you see a student or a class Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then on Thursdays you give them the online stuff because it's the bigger gap between lessons, then maybe Monday morning you check the data. Have they done it? I'm not sure. Give them a little nudge. Oh, I see. Like, some of you have done this. That's brilliant. Thanks so much. Looking forward to seeing everybody hitting the same thing, maybe give them a badge or a prize. So again, it's extrinsic motivation, which is okay, but we don't want to rely too heavily on that. So hard sell, check the data. Then in the following up class, really, you know, lay it on thick with the praise, name and fame the people who get the highest scores. Well done to Beatrice. That was a great job. You know, you did it in record time as well. Amazing. And it really, you know, show them that you're paying attention.
Yeah.
The isolation of working at home is one of the biggest off-putting factors. Like, oh, I don't really have the time. But actually, if I've seen that 3 people in my class are getting this, like, you know, the celebrations from the teacher, I want some of that, you know, I want that attention. I want to get a gold star from a teacher. So, you know, you afterwards, you have the celebration of action and also the celebration of learning. So those 2 things are separate. So one is, you did the exercises, you got the scores, you spent the time. So all of the metrics that we can see in the data, well done, congratulate everybody for that. But then the bigger thing, the real reason that we want them to do those online exercises, I mean, apart from any kind of compliance and contractual obligations for like the amount of time that people might have to do, the bigger thing is about the learning and what have they got out of it? How much more confident are they at this? How more fluent are they? How does this language now roll off the tongue, having spent more time doing the practice? And again, just really, you know, going for it with the praise and the congratulations and all of that. And it just, like, it gives strong feel good vibes. So people are happier to do it. Like, oh, I'm going to do this boring thing, but if I do this not very interesting thing, then I've got this reward coming. So you're kind of leading a little bit more with more positive things than, oh, Thierry, you haven't done your homework again. Can you please make time? You know, it's not how you want to open a session. You want to open it with excitement and dynamism, and that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the lesson as well. So those are, yeah, the key things, I guess. So like much of it is kind of in the moment action. So that's really lesson by lesson how you're going about it. Are you are you setting it up? Are you nudging while they're working? And are you following up properly? So those two things, the weaving, the setup and the follow-up are really important on a day-to-day, week by week. Just keep doing it. But there's also a lot of ways that you can set yourself up for success from the start. So looking at an overall picture of why are we bothering doing this? Like, yes, you know, your employer has said that you have to do, I don't know, 50 hours of English across the year, and you only get 10 hours of English with a teacher, which is a thing you really enjoy, and then you've got 40 hours of this practice to do in between times. It's not super motivating for somebody. And maybe, I mean, you know, I'm exaggerating, only 10 hours and 40 hours. It wouldn't necessarily be like that. But they've got kind of an obligation maybe to the person who is sponsoring their study or whatever. There's something that they have to do within that. But there are also reasons that why they would want to develop those skills and what kind of life do they want to have when they have those skills. Like, maybe you can get a promotion because you're better able to deal with multinational teams. Maybe you get to travel more because you're more capable and confident at dealing with situations on the fly in unfamiliar contexts, which, you know, like lots of English will help you kind of build towards. So kind of tapping into people's overall things and getting to know people really well at the start is really important. So those things I was saying about, like, using people's interests as like the hook, either before or after they do some online work, all of that comes from knowing your students really well and taking time to build proper rapport in the beginning. And so rapport is brilliant for everything. You can make all the mistakes you want later and be forgiven if you've got really good rapport with your students from the start. And that means developing meaningful connections with those individuals, understanding them, their motivations, their fears. A lot of stuff is about fear, and reassuring people, making a psychologically safe space for people to act in, and allowing them to dream big and have big ambitions, you know. So it's not like, oh, I've got to do these 50 hours because it's part of my work contract or whatever. But I've got, you know, I do want to be doing this international travel with my job. I think that would be so amazing. Or I want to be part of these international teams, or on the really strategic projects that work with all these people who don't speak French. Or there are always those motivations. But again, in a recent talk, I talked about WHOOP goals. So we all know about SMART goals, you know, that they're much more kind of, you know, they're specific, they're measurable, and they're very data centric. You know, you can, I've spent this much time doing this, I've learned that, I've taken these actions. That's all measurable almost by your LMS. But things like, who do I want to be in a year's time? You know, what do I really want with this? This is kind of the things that if you do the work with students to uncover those things, then you've got loads of perspectives in your toolbox to be able to approach somebody. So like, oh, maybe this isn't really working with them at a particular time. Okay, well, we'll not worry about SMART, they're specific and measurable. We'll think about like, oh, you know, where do you want your career to go? So the WHOOP goal is WOOP, which is wish, outcome, obstacles, and plan. And it's a much bigger picture, aspirational kind of way of going about goals. And it's obviously over a much longer period of time. So your wish, to articulate your wish, I want to be really confident in these meetings where I am chairing, and it's a multinational group. So there's a lot of languages, and English is the language that it happens in. And then, so once you've articulated that, which can be very simple, but then you really lean into what the outcome of that is. So if you're more confident at this, what is your life like? How do people respond to you? How do you feel in those contexts? How did I really explore the feelings? And so it's quite an emotive exercise. I react, so I feel like I own the space, and you know, we're getting things done. Relationships are kind of going well. There's no misunderstanding. Like really, like give them time to explore that, and all the while kind of be paying attention, because there's a lot of stuff about wishes, but there's a lot of stuff about fear and insecurity and things that as a trainer you can address via the work that you do in the classroom, but that you can also use in your sales pitch. Like, you know, these, having done this practice just helps you internalize it, and you feel so much less insecure, or like you worry less about language, which means that you have time to focus on the relationships that you're building using English, not focusing on just the English. So it helps people get past that. So all of that is really interesting for them personally. So they come to a new understanding of what they really want out of this and what it means to them. I've seen personal trainers, you know, like sports trainers use the same technique as well. You really visualize what it is that you want, and you go deep into your imaginary future life to really become attached to that vision as well, so that it sits more deeply with you. And then you look at obstacles. So you've got personal revelations, and you've also got kind of your, as a trainer, your understanding of that individual. And then with the obstacles, we don't have time, my boss is really demanding, my kids make too much noise, I don't get a long enough lunch break. All of those are logistical and they're external. So we manage logistics and external things in our lives all the time. And often people will come back to you saying, oh, I just don't have time to do the practice. Everybody has time, right? But we choose to spend it in different ways. So if I've come back with, I haven't had time, it means that this isn't a high enough priority for me to compete with the other things that also need my time. So by working on your outcome and deepening the vision for the future, this becomes more prioritized. So it bumps up the list a little bit. It still might not make it to the top because we are busy, but it will still bump up a little bit and get more, it's more likely to happen, basically. And you can talk to people about managing time and what time do you think you might be able to do. And I don't want you to work on English an hour every day. I want you to do half an hour on a Friday. That is all. And be really specific, but just say, like, this is what it is. But really you're working on the deeper motivation to bump this work up the priority list of all these competing things of work and kids and parents and, you know, volunteering, whatever it is that you do. Yeah, exactly. So that's a logistical thing. So we as adult professionals, we do that anyway. It's just a question of putting it in the batch of things that have to be managed. But the other side of it is just making it important enough. And feeling that is like, what are the feelings and the situations that internally would make me choose not to do this work? So maybe instead, I just feel a bit lazy on Friday afternoons, and I don't want to do a thing I'm not very good at. There's two things I feel a bit lazy and I'm not very good at. So there's an insecurity in there. I'm not very good at this. I'm better at maths. So there's something to be worked on with that. So if you identify, and it's a maximum of 2, we don't want them to come away just feeling like, oh, this is impossible. But you can easily come up with, well, when I'm online, I just don't really know if I'm doing the right thing, or if, you know, if my work is saving, or maybe I'm kind of doing the exercises and I can see that they're right, but I don't understand why. Or there will be some internal thing that makes me just not want to do it. So it's, you know, it's an isolation thing. Maybe I need to do it at the same time as my colleague who's taking the same course. We sit in the same room and we do it at the same time. And maybe we talk about it while we're doing it. And cheating is fine. It's really collaboration. So that's,
we're adults here. This is not, well, yeah.
Exactly. We're not at primary school. So there are those things of looking at what are the internal obstacles, what is making you personally back away from this exercise. And it might be that it's dull and you don't want to do it, but we've looked at that. We've looked at how the trainer can build things in. But then there's also like my own, like, oh, maybe I don't want to do it because I don't want my teacher to see that I get it wrong 5 times before I get it right. And there's a confidence issue that the trainer can address. And if those things are articulated, then the learner understands that it's an issue, but also the teacher or the trainer understands that it's an issue and you can work on that together. And you don't have to solve the students' personal problems. And that's not part of it. It's not therapy, but you can unlock things that are blocking people internal to themselves that will allow, and they're all little tiny incremental things that add up to something that could be revolutionary or could be just a little change into that person always making that time to do those things. So the obstacles are external. We're not interested because we all have those external things, but then there's making a plan. So the final part of the WOOP is the P, the plan, and that is, how am I going to do this? So maybe I will set time aside on a Thursday because I didn't get up for the gym on Thursday, so I'm not absolutely exhausted by 2 p.m. And that's my half an hour to do my work. And I will make sure that I really quiz my trainer beforehand on what it is that I'm supposed to be doing, and maybe talk to them about how I'm going through the exercises and why I find this so difficult. And I will ask for help when I need to, and whatever. So like making a plan to overcome those personal obstacles, as well as the kind of logistical stuff. And time planning, time management, they're all adult skills, and we can work with our students on those. We have to anyway. So we're all very optimistic about what we can achieve, which is why we all have far too much on our plates.
No, not me.
I can totally take on that project. That sounds fascinating. And make a cake for the school thing, and we can, we always do all of that kind of stuff. But the reality of like, this is going to take me this much time, and if it's going to be worth doing at all, I need to do it properly. So plan out that time, and that's time that you can spend with the student at the start. So do the practical stuff, but like, don't shy away from the personal stuff. The personal stuff is where you unlock the magic, and then all that stuff at the beginning helps build your rapport as well, which keeps you going, and as well as it enabling you to really support your student and take away the little obstacles. And if you're working with a large class or an individual, there will be lots of people who have the same issue. So it's if you've got lots of people, a lot of it will be insecurity or lack of confidence, and you can work on that together, and people can reassure each other, etc. So you're really getting the most out of that time that they spend together and making it worth them making the effort online as well. So tons of it is really, it's not about like making the online stuff any more interesting. It is what it is, and they have to. So it's really about the surround sound of what those things are. And that rapport, again, it helps build a social contract between them, because they love you now, and they don't want to let you down. They really don't want to let you down. So you can express this as
their cheerleader,
Yeah, exactly. You're so great. This is what they want to hear. Everybody loves a little green tick on something done correctly, and to have your name said in front of the class, or just to hear you did that really well, and being really specific about it. And I think we take an attitude to feedback as well, that it often has to be about the things that we got wrong, which is fine. We've got to correct our mistakes. But I did a course, a leadership course a few years ago, and it was about how you improve as a professional over the course of your career. And if you work on the things that you perceive as your gaps, the improvement is like this. And if you work on things that are your strengths, it goes and then across. So it's a good thing this podcast is videoed. So it's, if you work only on gaps and only on mistakes, you improve very incrementally and slowly over time. But if you work on and focus on the stuff that you're really good at, you improve vastly straight away from that effort, and then the incremental bit continues as you continue to work on your gaps. So you need to work on both, but it fits into feedback as well. You focus on people's strengths, because a lot of what holds us back is confidence. And I don't want to do those exercises online because I don't feel confident about it. build the confidence. It's all about empowerment.
50% of our job, I think, or more, is confidence building. It's just, I love it. I love this aspect of it. But
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important. And, we forget that like there are tiny actions that we can take as well as like the big, building it. It's just tiny actions and recognizing success,
recognizing success. Absolutely. It's a great reminder. I heard also in a similar vein, that statistic, I forget where, but we retain much more a compliment than the constructive criticism. So you might as well be sure and include them every time you have them,
Yeah, absolutely. And it just, people respond so well to it. So it's really nice. Yeah, so there's big, lot of different pictures. There was just one other thing that I wanted to add to that, is that we often expect our students to go off and be like independent learners when we're not around. But when we are around, we expect them to be like, to do what they're told. So we're effectively asking for, so in a lesson, I'll give you the instructions, you're going to do what I say, now we're going to have a discussion on this, now we're going to investigate this language. So they're kind of, they're relatively teacher dependent within that time, and that's what they wanted. But then they go away and they're going to like do their online exercises, or maybe they're going to investigate a topic online or something, and we're expecting them to be this kind of, we're expecting Superman outside of class, but in class we treat them a little bit like Clark Kent. So we want them, if we want them to be Superman outside of class, we need to treat them like Superman inside of class as well, which means giving them some control and making them do independent things while we are there to guide and support. So they build that independence and while we're there, and then they take that independence away and they use that independence in their online self-study kind of lives. So it's something that I've seen in various places where you've planned your lesson, it's really good, but effectively what the student is doing is like coming along with you on that. They're not directing any of that. They don't have control, and that's fine. That's probably what they want. But then once they're out there on their own, they've got to make decisions and decide what to look into, or I'm getting stuck with this, how do I figure this out? So building confidence is also about fostering independence within the time that you have together, so that they can take it away and apply that independence on the things that you're asking them to do outside of class. So it's such a mix of things. There's so many different things. Some people respond really well to one thing and not to another. But yeah, there's quite a lot of different strategies that you can take with people. But knowing them really well is such a key tool.
It's amazing, Deirdre. Like, I have so many things I want to bounce off of. I know our time is limited, but just to go back to what you were just saying about empowering them to be more independent, my take on that is that's the coaching approach. That's the learner-centric, letting them direct, okay, what do we want to work on today? What's most important? Or we could do this or this. What would you feel is most urgent for you today? Yeah. Is that kind of how you imagine it? Or do you have another scenario for people who aren't quite familiar with that approach?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the coaching approach is brilliant anyway. That just you can't rely on it 100%, because there does need to be a balance between like where you're going with your curriculum and the goals for the course, but also you want to be flexible enough to bring in what they need now without getting derailed entirely by it and ending up get down rabbit holes every time. So I think building in the time into your lesson plan for that kind of consultation of like what's going on for you, what's coming up, what have you struggled with, like do you want to show me an email trail that's gone awry and we can see if we can fix it, like that kind of thing. You can really focus on those things. But things even like so even in that situation, they're going to work on it, but they're still going to come to you as the expert, as I'm really struggling with this, can you fix my problem, essentially. So what we would do to kind of like level that up is, okay, you've got this problem, or you've got this thing is going wrong. Let's say a relationship with a colleague in the UK is kind of, it's getting a bit, it's not as brilliant as it once was. So then you can discuss like what might be the problem with that, and get them to identify what the issue is. And maybe it's that, I don't know, something that in French is direct, but in the UK is rude. So it's almost cultural. So then, okay, so obviously you're not trying to be rude. So how would you phrase this differently? And then you're like, well, maybe I need to do it differently, but I don't know the answer. Okay, so where can you go to find that answer out? Where would those things be? What are we looking up? And maybe it's a question of requests, making requests or asking favors. So there's like formulaic language that we would use to do that, where somebody might be saying, do that for me, which in one culture is not rude, but in somewhere else it is. And so, and you're still not telling them what phrases to use, but you're saying like trying to find the issue. So we're getting to levels of formality, politeness, like formulaic uses within, like functional language, like, and then getting to the point of naming the functional language, making a request, making polite requests, that then gives them the tool of they've got a Google search term now, making a polite request in English. So that's kind of the extra steps. So it is coaching, but it's also never giving them any answers. Okay, so we unpick this, unpick this, unpick this, unpick this. And then we get to the bit that you can now go away and look up, and you can give them, I don't know, 10 seconds on their phone. Okay, Google that and see what you get. And then you can look at what the answers are. So maybe you've got something from the British Council that has something really nice, or you've got something from a major publishing house that you know you can trust, and then you've got like another like website that looks a bit dodgy or whatever. Like, have a think about which ones of these resources would you trust, which ones have the answer. Do the two that we would automatically trust say the same thing? So trust is
nice questions. Yeah.
It's really interesting set of like just critical thinking questions where so you enable them to look at an issue they have, to unpick what the underlying problem is, to name the problem or the solution, and then to find the things they need to find, and then also like evaluate what they've come up with in the end as like, is this useful to me? And then at that point they're going, well, the British Council and or let's say Macmillan and Cambridge disagree, and then they're going to come to you. Then this is the point where you can say, you can have that conversation of like, well, both of them are probably correct, but they're taking different perspectives on this. And then that's a really interesting discussion, and it gives them, again, more tools for them to evaluate what they've got out there. And sometimes the answer is like making a polite request, and then you go into your online exercises and you find those bits, and you can even point them in that direction as well. And so they've gone out and found something from Macmillan and something from Pearson and something from some other like really renowned source, and you go, yeah, that's really cool, well done. Do you know that's in your homework as well? And it's in Bravo. So and maybe depending on the platform, it's probably searchable in some way that they could find the language that they're looking for like extra practice, so they could see an explanation on a Cambridge website, but then they could get just like tons of practice to internalize it using their amazing online exercises. Aren't you so lucky you have these? So this is all kind of ties
together. Sneaky, very sneaky. I love it, but very empowering. You're empowering them to then think critically, and then the next time they have a question, they will go search it, and bring back the language. That's really great. Love that idea.
And have really informed discussions about you. I found this. It's exactly what doctors globally don't want to do, because patients are going, oh, I think I have face cancer. You have a pimple, stuff, looking things up on the internet. We're the opposite of that. We want them to go out and find things, but also to evaluate what they find, because a lot of it is nonsense, and they need to be aware of what's nonsense and what's good. But there is tons of good stuff out there that can really, really help build that independence, and that, and that can kind of equal the relationship with the teacher, the trainer, which again builds more rapport. And it's just, it can be fabulous.
I love the way this is just weaving into a real partnership. You become a real partner in learning with this person, and it does develop a relationship, which is then very validating for us, because as trainers, because it's such a satisfying role, can be. And oh my goodness, I have there's just so many great things you've said. And do I have time for just one more? Like, could you make a little, and I'll let you go. I know you have to get out. When you do get that, I'm so busy, and they're just stuck in to, I'm busy, I'm stressed, I can't. Could you give me an example of a dialogue, like a real sentence or a real, you told us the techniques, but what would you actually say to someone who's like, "Oh, you don't understand. My boss is a slave driver. I'm so busy, I can't." What do you actually say to them?
I would sit down with them and just say, okay, well, look, let's look at your week. Let's look at where the windows are. And I also have like a little tool to calculate how much time people spend on different things, and see where there is any space at all. So let's have a look at it together. I will figure out, and you and I will make a contract, social contract, and agree when you're going to do this time, and say, even if you have to say, I don't expect you to do 5 hours a week. This is not, it's not reasonable, and it's not something that you can even possibly do, but you can't shave your time out of your work. So if it's that your boss is really demanding, that's one thing. You can help them shape the conversation with their boss, and that's quite advanced coaching then. But you can really just timetable it out and get them to block a time in their calendar. And if their boss is really unreasonable, call it something else. Don't say you're doing your English homework. Do say it's prep for meeting X, but block it out every week on a repeating thing. So let's have a look at your timetable. Not a timetable. Let's have a look at your calendar together. Show me where you think a gap might be. Show me where you think things are really impossible. And if you can't get it out of your work week, then it needs to be a Saturday. But then that means negotiation with family. But working on time management is a really huge thing that we do have to do with people. They have that optimism of like, yeah, I can just shoehorn this into all the other things that I can do. But if you sit down with them and you look at where's your time, and are you having to take away from sleep time to do this, then that's not super okay. But maybe you want to get up and listen to a really fascinating podcast at 6 a.m. when you walk the dog. That's also valid. But yeah, let's look at your calendar together. Let's figure out a space where you can commit to doing this work for me and for yourself. So really, once you've built that relationship stuff for me, who we've got really strong rapport with now, and for yourself and your wish, your whoop goal, that just put those things together. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, like a true direct line of question.
Really, yeah,
practical. Fantastic. Oh my goodness, Deirdre, this has been excellent, really excellent. I so appreciate you coming on and just sharing all of that with us. So if someone would like to get in touch with you, what is the best way, or would you recommend that we want to reach out to you for any reason?
If you want to reach out to me, my email address is hello@learningunfurled.co.uk. And if you Google Learning Unfurled Digital Education, it should come up with my website anyway, and you can contact me via many pages on that. So yeah, I'd love to hear from people. Yeah, but it was really fun to chat with you today. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much. We'll be watching on LinkedIn as well to see what you're up to. So thank you. Thanks for joining us in the Business Class ESL Break Room, the podcast designed to bring business English trainers useful ideas, inspiration, and conversation that motivates. Follow us on Instagram at business_class_language and subscribe to the ESL Break Room playlist on Spotify, Deezer, or Apple Music for new episodes. See you next time.